Hi everyone. So today we're going to do something a little bit different. In the online tutorials that I have and in the university classes I teach, we often work with React. And I make some assumptions about people's knowledge of HTML and CSS and JavaScript when I'm teaching these courses in React. But it occurred to me it might be helpful if I went ahead and did a few videos to kind of level set so that everyone can come into my classes with the knowledge that I would expect you to have of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So today's video will be on HTML, and I'll try to get us up to a basic understanding of HTML. And I'm going to frame our lesson today in terms of a narrative, a story. And I hope because of that, some of the things that we talk about might make a little bit more sense and it might stick with you a little bit better. Now, the story I'm telling might parallel with some historical facts and it might deviate. So just as a warning, not every part of this story is necessarily factual. So our story starts out in about the early 90s and involves you and me. And we are both researchers and we research slime molds, let's say. I remember that from high school biology. The phylum was Myxomycota, something like that. I went ahead and fact checked on Wikipedia. Ends up that phylum is now defunct, but whatever. We're gonna have fun because slime molds is fun to say. Now in our story, you have written a research paper called Just How Slimy Are Slime Molds. And I read it and I was blown away. You printed off a copy and mailed it to me and I read it and was blown away. And I thought, you know what, I'm gonna write a companion piece called Just How Moldy Are Slime Molds. And of course, in my paper, I will reference your paper. Now, here are the problems we're finding. I want a lot of people to read my paper. I want a lot of people to read your paper. But we're here in the early 90s and we don't quite have the web as we know it nowadays. And so we're facing three major problems. Number one is you printed off a copy, but it would be nice if I could just read the original like electronic copy, but your copy's on your computer and mine's on mine. And our computers don't talk to each other. Now we are at a research facility or maybe different universities, and maybe you are on a network for your university and I'm on a network for my university, but still there's no way for us to read each other's papers. Plus, I like to turn my computer off at night, and so you might want to read it, but then I shut down my computer. So we've got that kind of problem to solve. We want to be able to put our paper somewhere where any time of day or night, anyone could read it. Now, number two is even if we found the centralized place to put our papers, you happen to use a PC, I happen to use an Apple Macintosh, you use WordPerfect, I use MacWrite, and so our computers don't talk nice to each other. The word processors that we used for these programs, they don't talk to each other. And so it's really kind of hard, which is why you ended up printing it and mailing it to me. And now the third problem is when someone reads my paper and they see I've footnoted yours, then they're going to have to go to the library and they're going to have to see if they can find your article, because of course they're going to want to read yours after they read mine. And wouldn't it be nice if there was a way that you could just click on something in my paper and go see your paper? So once again, here's our kind of three problems we have. We don't have a centralized location for these papers. Two, we have incompatible formats. And three, there's no way to quickly jump. We're science fiction nerds, of course, and so we'd love to hyperjump, right? Hyperjump from your paper to my paper, and we don't have a way to do that. Okay, so what would our solution look like? Well, like we said, you are on a network for your school, I'm on a network for my school. Wouldn't it be nice if we had a network of networks, right? An interconnected network, an internet, right? An internet. Okay, so this internet would consist of my computer, your computer, and a whole bunch of other computers, ones that don't get shut down at night, that are on 24/7, and we could put our papers there, and then you and I and everyone could access from this centralized place anytime they wanted. So we hear that some computer nerds are working on this and they have an internet ready for us. Awesome. Now what do we need? Well, ends up we need some sort of computer program that will allow me and you to see each other's papers using a common format. It doesn't matter what computer I'm using, I would be able to read these papers. And it'd be nice if, in addition to my paper and your paper, I could peruse or browse other papers out there, right? And so we would want to build some sort of program, a peruser or a browser. Yeah, let's stick with browser, right? Okay, we could have a browser that would allow us to view these formatted documents. We want to be able to read these documents and pull them up quick, like hyper quick. And so we'll come up with a name for the format of this type of document. How about hypertext? So that's what we'll call it. The format of this document will be called hypertext. Now this browser thing, unlike a word processor, it's just going to be read only, and it's going to be fairly simple. We're going to have a way to give it instructions to do basic things that we do when we're doing a paper, formatting paragraphs, bold, italics, that kind of thing. So we're gonna want some sort of basic, kind of like a programming language, but it doesn't have to be like a full-blown programming language, because all we're doing is we're going to be marking up this document. Just like in high school when you turned in a paper for your English class and the teacher would write in the margins like, you don't need a semicolon, these are two different sentences, or stuff like that, underline this, boldface this. What we want to do is, your teacher marked up your document. We want to be able to write our document, our paper, and then mark it up kind of like that high school English teacher with different instructions to the browser. And this language, well, it's going to be a markup language. And what's our document? It's hypertext, right? So we're going to call it Hypertext Markup Language, HTML. That sound good? That makes sense, right? And within our hypertext document, I want to be able to hyperjump to your document. I'll link to it, right? So that will be my hyperlink. I'll want to be able to do a markup to tell the browser to make sure that this phrase, when you click on it, takes me to your paper. And then one last thing is these documents are going to be on servers all over this internet, and we want a set of rules, a protocol for how these documents can be transported from the server over to your computer or to someone else's computer. And so we'll call that a hypertext transfer protocol. So those are just the rules of how information gets sent across the internet for these hypertext documents. Okay, so where we are now, we have an internet which solves the problem of having localized documents. Now we can have them centralized, and we have a browser that understands HTML, which solves the problem of these incompatible formats. So now let's go into how we would mark up our document to send the formatting instructions to the browser. So to get started, we're going to take a little break in our story for right now, step out. I want you to be able to follow along with me at home. And I don't want you to have to download a whole bunch of stuff to do this. And if you've watched my tutorials before or attended my university classes, we like to use Replit as our IDE, our Integrated Development Environment. Means you don't have to install anything on your computer, but you can program just like anyone else. So it's a browser-based programming environment. So if you already have a Replit account, I would suggest go there. And if not, then go ahead and sign up real quick and then come back and meet us here. Okay, so here we are in Replit, and I'm going to go ahead and click Create. And within templates, what you would do is type HTML, and there it is. We want HTML, CSS, JS. And click on that. And for the title, you can call it whatever you want. I'll call it Level Set HTML. And I'll leave this one public so you guys can look at it. You'll see there is already some information here. This is HTML. I want you to go ahead and highlight all of this and erase it. We're going to learn this from scratch. So go ahead and do that. And if you want, you can also go over here and the script.js, you can delete that. And the style.css, you can delete that also. Oh, let me explain what we have right here. In this column, we have a file. This is similar to any sort of file you have on your computer. This happens to end with .html. This is just like your file finder. So we can see what we're working on. Over here in this area, this is where we'll write our HTML. So this will be text and our markup. Our instructions to the browser will be here. And then over here is a mini version of what we're doing here. So I'm going to say, let me just type Kenny Rocks, and you can put your name Rocks. And if you can either hit run and it'll show up right there, or you can just hit this refresh to show you, yay. If I do that and click on this open in new tab, you can click on that. And there we go, Kenny Rocks, yay. Okay, let's get rid of this. To start out, we're just going to write our paper just as if we were using Notepad or some other text editor. Here's my title, just how moldy are slime molds. Okay, my first sentence, slime molds are no longer in the fungi kingdom. So is it really a mold? All right, that's my first sentence. I also want to mention that slime molds can be slimy, and we'll keep it to that right now. So there's my very important research paper. I'm going to go ahead and hit refresh. And there we go. Just how moldy are slime molds? Slime molds are no longer in the fungi kingdom, so is it really a slime mold? Slime molds can be slimy. Okay, besides the period that I missed, looks great, right? Well, no, something happened. It squished everything together right here. I put nice line breaks right here, but it doesn't seem to recognize that. Let me show you something else. Let's say I put a whole bunch of spaces in there and I hit refresh. It still just has one space between just and moldy. And here I'm going to put a few tabs. I'm going to let you guess what's going to happen. All right, give up. There we go. Slime molds. Oh, it ignores the tabs. Okay, so this is our first introduction to, here's a vocab word, white spaces. White spaces consist of tabs, line breaks, and spaces that are more than one space in between words. And the rule here is it's going to ignore those. All it's going to see is one space between words. So how are we going to do this then? This does not look good. Well, let's back up a second. Sure, we could try to come up with some sort of page break symbol, something to tell the computer to put a page break. But let's step back for a second and think about what we're really trying to accomplish here. When we put a line break and then another line break, we're indicating that this is a paragraph. So we're gonna abstract things just for a second, because if we treat this like a paragraph, then we are able to make this useful for various different applications. Because in some written languages, paragraphs start at the left and go to the right, and others they start at the right and go to the left. So it would be nice if we could allow the browser to decide how it wants to render that paragraph. And render is just the fancy word for show, right? Taking the text that we have plus the instructions to the browser and marrying those together, and that's what we'll call rendering. So how should we tell the browser that this is a paragraph, right? Well, we could say something like start of a paragraph, and then when it's done, we could go down here and say end of a paragraph. Let me put a couple line breaks there so it's more readable. Now the problem, of course, becomes, well, what if you're writing an English paper and you want to talk about paragraphs, and in your sentence is the phrase start of a paragraph? Then you're going to confuse the browser. So we're going to come up with a system that is going to avoid some of that confusion. We could put some arbitrary symbols, like we could do a asterisk around our instructions, something like this. Start of paragraph, end of paragraph. We could use tildes. We can start with an asterisk, end with a tilde, whatever we want, just some arbitrary symbol. But for the fun of it, how about we start it with a less than sign and we end it with a greater than sign. Just fine, right? Whoops. There we go. Once again, we just have an arbitrary symbol on each side. Okay, so this isn't too bad. We see some repeated information that's kind of useless there, especially in terms of like math, right? Remember, computer science and all the programming languagey stuff, that was all under mathematics in the beginning, and mathematicians like to be concise and not have extra stuff hanging around. So there we go. Start paragraph, end paragraph. Not bad, not bad. This start and end, those we could probably get rid of and just say, how about if we have a less than sign and then nothing, that's start. And if we have a less than sign and a forward slash, again, just an arbitrary symbol, we'll call this end. So this now means start paragraph and end of paragraph. Oh, I don't know how that happened. Let's get rid of that. Okay. But even the word paragraph is kind of long and might get a little monotonous to type out and error prone. So what if we just reduce this down to P? P for paragraph. Well, let's see what happens now. We hit run, or I could have hit refresh. And still didn't do anything. In fact, it's got this weird P space. You know what? I bet you the browser doesn't even like that space. This is how parsimonious we want our language to be. It's just symbol, P, symbol, 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 P, symbol. There we go. Now let's try to hit refresh. And there we go. Isn't that nice? We don't have a paragraph around this, but we really should, because if we add anything else to it, like maybe we want to start listing some slime molds, hit run. And once again, it's up there. So just to be safe, we will stick, and I'm just copying and pasting right here. We'll just put these around each one. And this brings up a good point. I meant to paste it down here, but let's do it this way. We'll notice that there's no difference whether we put the text of our paragraph right in between the beginning of and end of paragraph, or if we have white space in between. So that's good to know. Let's just finish this off, put that up there, and we'll hit refresh, and great. Doesn't look any different, but now on this side we know everything's contained in a paragraph. Okay, so what is this symbol called? Well, we call these tags. So our markup that we send to the browser, so we're sending some text and we're sending markup instructions on how to format that text, and we are going to call these tags. And the one without a forward slash, the start of, we'll call that an opening tag. And when it has this symbol, we know it's the end of, and we'll call that a closing tag. Okay, well, there must be other tags, right? What are some things that we do with our word processors? Well, we do italics. So let's see if we have an italics tag. So we would think maybe we just do italics like that. But we know with paragraph, we reduced it to P. So with italics, we'll just reduce it to I. Now, as soon as I put the greater than sign, Replit helped me out by putting the closing tag. So it saw I wanted to do an opening tag for italics, and it did the closing tag for me. So that's pretty nice, but I want to italicize the word how, so that doesn't really work too well for me. But I'll just do it like that. There we go. So just how moldy are slime molds? Let's refresh. There we go. Look, how is italicized now. And what about, let's say we want slime molds to be bold. Well, bold is just B, B for bold. Very easy to remember. And I will cut and paste. There we go, slime molds. And I hit refresh. There we go. My slime molds are now bolded. So usually in the top of a word processor, you see italics, bold, and the last one, underline. So how would we do underline? How about you? That would make sense, right? How moldy? We'll underline the word moldy for some reason. There we go. Just how moldy are slime molds? We should probably put a question mark. Now, if I put the question mark inside the bold, what do you predict will happen? Will the question mark be bold or will it be regular? All right, it's bold. What if I don't want it bold? Well, I can delete it and I can put it after closing bold tag. Now, what happens if I want something bold and italics? All right, let's say we want to bold and italicize the phrase no longer. Okay, so bold, we do B, and it's going to help me out there. And what I want to do, I want symmetry. That's the key. So I'm going to then put I, not capital I. These are all lowercase, by the way. Oops, and didn't change that back for me. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and cut and paste. And I hit refresh. There, slime molds are no longer. So it's both italicized and bold. So you'll notice that we have, like I said, symmetry here. If you want to think of it kind of as a sandwich, especially if you're very particular about sandwiches and you have to have, you know, your bread on the outside and then mayo on both sides and then lettuce and then your meat in the middle. That's this very particular kind of sandwich. Now, in the old days, if you got them out of order, something like that, it would give you an error. Modern browsers are a little more tolerant of poorly formatted HTML, but we want to do things the right way because eventually it will catch up with us. Then let's say I wanted to, in addition to all that, I wanted to underline it. Well, where would I put the underline? Here? In between the B and the I? Does that work? Yep, that works. But what if I wanted the underline part to be the very outside? So first it's underlined, then it's bolded, then it is italicized. Do I get any problems? Nope. So what does that show us? It really kind of doesn't matter the order, whether it's underlined first, then bolded, then italicized, or italicized first, as long as we have our symmetry. So if it's UBI, it should be IBU. Okay, great. Let's do one more. This is the title of our paper. Wouldn't it be nice if this was just a little larger of a font than the rest? Well, I'm going to change these paragraph tags to a heading tag. And we have different levels of heading. So we have, and I get this helper text for some browsers, you may see this, other ones you may not, but I'll change this to H1, which is heading level 1, and that is the biggest heading. So you can see just how moldy our slime molds, but maybe this is too big for us. So we want to go down to heading level 2. So it kind of seems like, 2 is bigger than 1, so you would think that size of the font is going to be even bigger than H1. It actually works in reverse. Think of these as descending subheadings. So the heading number 1, that is the top. When we do heading 2, it's a little bit smaller, you can see. And also you'll notice that it bolded everything for us. And that was the same with heading 1 also. This is just the way some of these headings come pre-formatted. They come pre-formatted with size of the text and also with whether it's bolded or not. So we don't really even need these bold tags in there because we set it as a heading, so it's going to be bold anyway. And there we go. Okay, so far we have learned 5 different HTML tags. We've got paragraph, underline, bold, italics, and our heading tags, H1, H2 on down. But we haven't got to our problem that we had is our number 3 problem is how do you link to someone else's document? So that's what we're going to go over now. We'll go back to our full web page. I haven't hit refresh, so let me hit refresh, and there we go. That's what we've been working on. Now, I want to be able to link to your paper, right? And you wrote a paper called Just How Slimy Are Slime Molds. And in order to create a hyperlink, we not only need to tell the browser that a certain amount of text represents a link, we also want to tell it where to go. And we haven't talked yet about how we find things on the internet. We know that our files are going to be kept on a server somewhere that stays awake 24/7, 365, and 366 on leap years, right? So we have that problem solved, but how do I know where these are located? Our hypertext documents, we could call them a resource. There will be other things that we want later on, like images that are resources. So we want a sort of resource locator. And we want to use the same type of format for all types of documents. So we want it to be uniform. So we call this a uniform resource locator, or a URL. And that's what we see right up here in our window. You should probably be familiar with this. Remember, the HTTP stands for Hypertext Transport Protocol. The S stands for Secure. That was added later. And the name of this document is levelsetslimy.kennyjacobson.repl.co. And anyone, if you have this URL, this uniform resource locator, you can see this document. And this is what we'll need when we go ahead and create our link. So let's do that. Right here, I made a bold assertion. Slime molds can be slimy. I want to be able to back that up, right? And there's nothing like a good Wikipedia article to help me do that. So let's look up slime molds on Wikipedia. There we go. And again, we have a uniform resource locator right here. We'll go ahead and copy this because we will need that later on. Let's go ahead and right here, we'll put parentheses and we'll just type the word link. That's what we used to do in the old days. And around this link is where we'll put our tags. Now, what would make sense to put as a tag? Maybe an L for link? Well, that could make sense, but that's not what we do. The tag we use is A for anchor. And maybe you can think of it this way. The paper out here is the ship, and the right here is the anchor that's tied to the ship. I don't know. I realize that's a stupid metaphor, but maybe it'll help it stick in your mind. So we have an anchor, and we'll go ahead and close that, and we'll move the word link in there. And if I refresh, we see link, but I don't get that underline, the thing that we're used to, or the color, right? Well, it doesn't know where to go yet. So we're going to introduce another concept. Within tags, we can put what we call attributes. And an attribute is a named piece of information. So it's a piece of information that has a general or a generic name for it. And in this case, the information we want to send, and we'll put it in quotes, is this URL. So that's where we want it to go, but we need to give it a name. And we can't just give it any name. There's a set name for when we want to reference a hypertext document. So it's a hypertext reference, an href, a hyperlink reference. I don't know, whatever you want to think of it, but it'll be href equals. And notice, here's another thing that I didn't address. If you're using Replit or any IDE for the first time, it's doing things with different colors. So my text, it's leaving white. My tags, it's turning blue so I can visually see the difference. And then over here, this attribute, it's doing light blue. And then the value, the piece of information, which is in quotes, is orangish red, whatever color that is to you. So that's why we have a kind of a little rainbow going on here. But if I hit refresh now, and if I click on link, there we go. We went to our Wikipedia article. Very nice. Now, how do I get back? Well, there's no back button in here, so I just hit refresh. But let's see it, how it would normally behave on our web page. So I click link, and there I hyper jumped to the Wikipedia article, and I can hit the back button and get back to our page. Awesome. So that is how we do a hyperlink. We use the anchor tag. Now, of course, I also want to reference your papers, so I will go ahead and do the same thing. All at the bottom here, within its own paragraph, I will put a href equals, and I'll just do double quote right now with nothing in it so I can finish this off. And I'll say a, and then within here, I will write the title of yours, just how slimy are slime molds, and I will put your URL right there. Nope, that's not where I wanted that. This is where I want the URL, and the text is just how slimy are slime molds. Okay, and that goes in between the opening and closing anchor tags. Now when I hit refresh, there we go, just how slimy are slime molds. I'll hit refresh here, and if I click on this, it should take me to your paper. There we go, and I can go back. And then later, you can update your paper with a link back to mine. Woohoo! Now, let's take a look at our Wikipedia article. You'll notice that this is pretty simple text. This is following this kind of old school web research paper kind of thing. There's not a whole lot of bells and whistles, and let's see what they're doing. Well, this is probably a header, right? Maybe H2. We see they've used bold. We see they have links there. And another cool thing is they have pictures. So how would we get pictures or images in there? Well, it's kind of similar to our anchor tag in that we're going to have to pass it some information. We're going to have to give it the URL to tell our browser where on the internet is this picture so I can pull it in and format it within our document. So where should we put it? How about we put it right here? And what would be a good tag for this? Well, image would be nice, right? Because it's fully spelled out, but as we know back in the old days, we didn't want to have to type all that. Could we use I? No, we can't use I because we're already using that for italics. So how about we just type IMG? Does that sound good? And we'll go ahead and close that tag like that. And we don't really have any text, right? This is an image, so nothing is going to go in between there, but we do need to put an attribute in here because we want to be able to bring in this URL. How are we going to get this? Well, let's do a little trick right now. I'm going to click on this and then I'll right click and I'll say open image in new tab. And there we go. That is the URL. I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go back over here. And in my image, I'm going to put quotes and there we go. And let's see, do we just do href? Will that work? Let's see what happens. Do we have, no, nothing happened. Yeah, so it'd be too easy if it was just href. When we're dealing with images, we don't use href. We want to know what the source is. So would it make sense to just type the word source? Yes, that would make a lot of sense. Is that what we do? No, we abbreviate it src. And guess who always, when they're typing, trying to type src, ends up typing scr? Yeah, this guy. And so I really hate this abbreviation because my fingers get dyslexic on me and I always type it in wrong. And I always try to figure out why my web page is not looking like it should. And anyway, yeah, it's a personal problem. I'll deal with it. Okay, let's go ahead and see if that fixes the problem. Oh, it does. It certainly does, but holy cow, that's huge, right? That is huge. I don't think I want it that big. Okay, there is another attribute we can use. There's two. I'm just going to use one, which is width. And as you can guess, there's also height. But all you have to do is set one of them. If I set the width, then the height will be set automatically. It'll scale it down. So I could do width equals 100 and do a refresh, and there we go. That's 100 pixels wide. If that's too small, we can bump it up a little bit. How about we do 200? There we go. I like that. Okay, so we got our image looking good. Okay, we're not quite done with image because I have this image opening tag and closing tag. But as you'll notice, we don't really put anything in here. And so as kind of a shorthand, we have a rule in HTML. And remember, I told you up to this point, everything has to be symmetrical. Everything has to be symmetrical. Well, we're already going to break that rule. And this only works for certain tags, so you'd have to look them up on the internet and see which ones work. But we can get rid of this closing image tag and we can put the / there. And if we do that, we shouldn't get any errors. Nope, it's still there. So what we call this is a self-closing tag. An image is one of those that is a self-closing tag. Now there's another one that we'll go over real quick. We look at this Wikipedia page and we got the image, we got the text, we got we got bold, and you'll notice there's this little line, well, this long line that goes all the way across. And that's a ruled line, right? Like ruled paper was lined paper, and it's horizontal, so it's a horizontal rule. And if we want to use that, we have a special tag, and it's self-closing, called HR, and we'll do a / and we'll do our greater than, and when we hit refresh, there we go, we have that horizontal line right there. That might not seem very special, but it actually ends up in modern websites now too. And sometimes it gets renamed in certain frameworks, but it's a very useful little tool to have in your tool belt. Okay, let's move on. We have a slime mold there. What if we wanted to add a few more? Put a list right there. And you can see I kind of stole it from right here. Let's say we want this one there too. So we'll put this down there, and let's go ahead and we'll grab, how about this one down there? And when I hit refresh, it's going to be a nice little list, right? Uh-oh. Remember, we had those white spaces. We could put each one as its own paragraph, but then we're going to have that extra space in between. And maybe we want them right on top of each other. How would we do that? Okay, one way, and this is not the best way, we'll go over the best way in a second, but one way is to put a line break tag in there. Remember in the beginning, I said we should have a line break tag, and then I kind of glossed over it. Well, we're back. There really is one, and it's just BR for break or line break, and it's a self-closing tag, just like HR, just like image. And if I put one after each one of those, you'll see it doesn't put the space in between. Let me refresh this one so we can take a look. All right, this is a little bit easier to see. So they're right on top of each other, and we like that. And let's say we want to number them. Well, we'll put number 1, number 2, and number 3. Great. We'll go ahead and refresh here. There we go, they're numbered. Now what happens if we now want to add this one? Is this the one we skipped? Yeah, I think so. It starts with an L. And what if we wanted to put it right here in the 2 position? Well, then we have to go ahead and put that there, and then we have to make that number 2, then we have to change 2 to 3, and then 3 to 4. And you can imagine if you had a big long list, that would be annoying. Plus, we really do want to avoid these line breaks whenever we can, because there's usually a better way, a more abstracted, logical way to represent what we want. And in this case, what we want is a list. And the list is going to be a container, and within that container, we will have list items. So how are we going to do this? Well, first of all, I'm going to get rid of these because, like I said, we don't like them. And we are going to do L, right? List. No, we can't, because there's going to end up being 2 types of lists. There will be an ordered list, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on. And there is an unordered list, which are just simply bullet points. And so we're going to we'll do the numbered list first. So that is going to be ordered list, OL. And down here, we'll change this to OL. And because it's going to do the numbering for us, we'll get rid of these, and I'll go ahead and we'll go back to where we were. We'll take that one out and add it back in later. So we have an ordered list, and these are our items. Let's see what happens so far. Well, not quite what we wanted. It indented it. That's kind of interesting, but it smushed them together again. Well, that's because we need an embedded set of tags. So an OL, or its unordered counterpart, UL, they require list items inside to tell them what are the pieces of information it is listing. So we're going to go ahead and put these around each one. Okay, and just like our little sandwich, we have the OL is the bread on the outside, and then we have LI, and then a closed LI, then an LI, and another closed one. And when we hit refresh, there we go. Once again, we can see it a little bit easier here, and it numbered it for us. And if we want to add this last one, the one we missed, to our list, and we want to put it as number 2, all we have to do, LI, I'll paste it in there, and there we go. It put it right there, and it reordered those. Now, what if I want to change these to just bullet points? Well, the OL, I will change from ordered list to unordered list, and I go here, and now they're just bullet points. A quick comment about how I'm writing these out. You'll notice I'm being a little haphazard. Paragraphs, I'm just putting in between the paragraphs, and there's like no indentation. Sometimes it's nicer if these are indented so you can visually see. And once again, like this no longer, I have all these tags inline. But once we get to more complex tags, especially ones that require embedded tags, it becomes nice, like just visually nice, to be able to see these, which are the outer tags, lined up physically, and these inner ones lined up with each other. Now this could all be line 16 through 21, it could be all on one line, and the browser will render it the same. It doesn't matter to the browser. This matters to you and I as HTML programmers, developers. We want to be able to read this a little nicer. And you always want to make your code easily readable by the next programmer who comes behind you. And 9 times out of 10, that programmer that comes behind you will be you in 6 months. And you don't want 6 months from now you to be furious with current you because you took a few shortcuts and now you've made code that's a little bit harder to understand. And that's not just true for HTML, it's true for all programming languages. All right, how are we doing so far? We are blazing ahead. We have a great looking document, right? But wouldn't it be nice if we look over at Wikipedia, they have a table here, kind of like a Excel spreadsheet, right? Wouldn't that be cool? Yes, yes it would. And we're gonna do that right now. So, what do you think the tag will be for a table? All right, I'm letting you think on that one for a second. Okay, time's up. It's table. Yay, that's a cool one. It is what it says, right? Once again, just like with our list, we have embedded tags. With table, we're gonna need embedded tags also because we want to first tell the browser this is gonna be a table, and then we want to tell the browser here are the rows, and then we want to tell the browser here is the data in each row. Here is the cell data, let's say, for each row. So we started out with table, Wouldn't it be nice if the next one was just row, but it's not. It is table row or TR for short. It's not table row, it's just TR, but think of TR as table row. All right, so that's our row. And then once again, it'd be nice if the next one were cell or maybe table cell. It's not, think of it as table data, TD. There we go. And so let me just start, we'll say hi and see what happens from here. All right, we'll go out here, we'll refresh, and it just says hi. Well, it doesn't look like much of a table. Okay, well, let's see what we can do. First of all, before we put any more data, I don't even have cool little lines around it. So here's the little trick we're going to use. We're going to use a tag attribute. And in this case, it is the border thickness, which is just called border. And we'll just set it equal to 1. Now, when I hit refresh, there we go. We got a border around it, and we have a table with 1 column and 1 row. That's it. So let's add another column or another piece of data, another tuple for those of you who like computer sciencey words, and we'll do there. I'll get this dot out of there. Let's see what happens now. Hi there. Okay, so we got 1 row, 2 columns. What if we want a second row? Well, we can do TR and we'll do TD, or so we did a table row. Now we'll do table data. Hey, and if I just left it like this, we're not going to get an error, but you'll see it kind of looks weird here, right? And that's because we're missing this cell. So we could say, hey, TD, hey, back, and we'll refresh. There we go. This looks pretty traditional. But also, let's say we just didn't want any data in there, but we also didn't want it to look weird, out of place. We just want like null. So what we would do is we'd still set up those table data, so the TD tags, we just wouldn't put anything in there. And so when we do that there, it kind of maintains that spreadsheet, that table-y kind of look, even though this cell happens to be empty. Now in recent years, they've added more tags to go within table, and there's lots of different ways to style it, but that's for later lessons. We're just covering the basics. If you were writing websites back in 1997, this is pretty much what you would be using. Okay, believe it or not, we are almost done with the basics. There's one more important tag that we want to go over, and this important tag is kind of a generic, and the name of it kind of reflects this generic nature. We can think of this as a page division. So you want to divide your page up into little sections. We call these divisions, or just for short, div. This is our div tag. And this div tag has become pretty important over the past 2 decades. We use it for a lot of things. And the beauty of this is you can kind of make up the logic yourself of what this means. And because it's a generic, here I could just say, slime molds rock. Okay. And if I hit refresh, I got slime molds rock, and it behaves a lot like a paragraph tag, but we don't have the concept of paragraph hanging over this. And one thing that we can do is, if these 2 paragraphs are part of like a logical division, part of a logical section, we could put those two paragraphs within a div tag. And I'll show you right now just a simple example of where this could help us. So as we've seen right now, our web page is a lovely black lettering on a white background. But we want to spruce it up a little bit. We'd love to be able to maybe change these to, I don't know, green, let's say. Green, because green makes me think of mold, right? So what we could do is within this paragraph, we could use an attribute called style. Within the style, we could say color. Instead of equals to, we're going to use a colon. Just kind of go with me on this one. Color. And if we hit refresh, we can see now our text right here, this paragraph, is a beautiful green. But what if we want both of these pieces of text to be green? Well, remember, we've sectioned these off, both paragraphs, into their own division, their own section. So if I take this and I cut it and I paste it instead into the division tag, the div tag, now when I go here, everything inside of this div tag where it asks for, oh, what color should the text be? It'll say the text should be green. And for the fun of it, we might just want to indent that too. So now we can visually see that the div tags are on the outside and then these p tags are inside of the div tags. Now, those of you who have done some HTML, you've probably been saying this whole time, but where's the HTML tag? Where's the body tag? Yeah, I skipped those. What we're doing right now is still not legitimate HTML. Like I said, browsers nowadays are very forgiving. So what we've been creating is HTML fragments. But now let's clean this up. But I saved this for last because I wanted to introduce you to the concept of a division. And we're going to now think of these next few tags that we're going to do as divisions, but very specific divisions. And the first one, and you'll notice how I wrapped, sometimes we'll use the word wrapped. I wrapped these two paragraphs in a div. I am now going to wrap everything we just did in a tag called HTML. So this tells the browser I am using HTML. And once again, it tried to be helpful and put my HTML closing tag right there. I'm going to cut it, go to the bottom, and put it there. So I'm going to hit refresh and nothing's going to happen. But now we can sleep a little bit better at night knowing that all of this has been wrapped in an HTML. But we're not done yet because there are a couple more standard divisions. First of all, this part that we did, the part that we want displayed in the browser, is the body of our HTML. And so we have another standard tag called body. Once again, it tried to help me, but we'll go down here and we'll close our body tag. And so again, it's like our little symmetrical sandwich. We've got HTML, then body, then all the rest of our stuff going on. And once again, it is not going to change what this looks like. But let's do one more thing. If we have body, what else? Why are we even making that distinction? Well, because there is also header information. We'll just call that head. And what is this? This is information that we don't want displayed on our document, and yet it's information we want to send to the browser. It's data about our data. And when you have data about data, we call that metadata. And so we want some metadata, and the most popular, the first one you learn probably, is title. If you notice right now, this is the URL, right? And if you go up here in the browser window, it just says HTTPS and has the URL up there. Wouldn't it be nice if the title of our paper were actually showing up in this tab? Notice it won't affect anything in this screen, but this is instructions to the browser to do other stuff. So we're going to write title, and in here, I'm just going to write just how moldy, and keep spelling that wrong, ... Now I hit refresh. Nothing changed here, but look at this tab. Now it says just how moldy. Okay, there is a lot of other stuff that goes into this header information. We are just not going to cover it today. These are things for other classes that I'll go over. Now, one thing about this body tag that I didn't go over before is, let's say we want all text to be green. Remember, first we did just a paragraph, then we went up a level and did a certain little division section. Now, let's just say everything. Everything in this page is all the text is going to be green. So I move that up to the body, and there we go. Now it's all green. Well, of course, the links aren't, and that's, you can control that with cascading style sheets, CSS, but that will be a lesson for another day. Okay, now finally, we are still not done. There is one more thing left to do, and this is, you'll notice right up here, there's a 5. What is that? What does that even mean anything? Yes, it means HTML5. So since its beginning, we have gone through 5 different versions, if you will, of HTML. They're usually backwards compatible with the previous versions. They just add more stuff to it. And what we want to do, and what a lot of browsers like to see, is the declaration of what type of HTML you're using. And so what we use nowadays to indicate that we are coding in HTML5 is less than, exclamation point, doc type space, HTML greater than. You will notice this is not a self-closing tag. This one does not have a closing tag down here. This one breaks all the rules, but that is because technically this is not a tag. This is just information to give the browser on what to expect as far as this document. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that was informative. This should get you up to that level where I would expect you to be if you were to take one of my university classes where we talk about React, or if you watch one of the tutorials where we talk about React. This is kind of the base HTML that we will build on in future courses.